It's loading. Oh, there we go. Hello and welcome to the First Click Inc. podcast, where we talk about what works with SEO, SEM, and social media marketing. Today, I'm joined with Micah from a pretty well-established Google Plus community. Well, that's where I met him at least, called Dumb SEO Questions. It's a pretty good community. I think it's got like 25,000 members in it right now. And he actually talks on the panel every week. So if you have any SEO questions, make sure to ask him some questions there. He's been doing SEO for 10 years and he's currently the senior SEO manager at Zendesk. Do you want to fill in any blanks, Micah?
Well, beyond that, I've been doing some SEO advisorships here or there. I've got one with SEO Radar, which is kind of SEO site auditing tool, as well as great nonprofits, basically a website for charities. So yeah, helping out where I can, and that's been enjoying quite a bit of that.
Nice. So I think kind of what I want to talk about today is like your successes and kind of how did you get started doing this stuff, and why do you still keep doing it, and why do you? I mean, for me, I love doing this stuff. I'm passionate about it, and even if people say SEO is dead, I just shrug them off because I know it's in no way dead. But yeah, so I guess those are the first questions.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I started in SEO basically out of grad school. I grew up in the Silicon Valley, so I already kind of was big on the tech side of things, and had the connection through my grad school. Started in an SEO agency. Really good one at the time. Stayed there for about 3 years. Decided that I was a bit more of an in-house type person. I'm kind of big a bit with efficiency, productivity, and really kind of helping a single client versus many. And from there, I latched on to more of the data side, the analytics, things that SEO is this fun kind of balance between the two, and I always kind of wanted to see what I can do with making SEO a little more mathematical, a little more trying to solve it out and showcasing some of that. So I went over into the in-house world, started a comparison shopping engine there, which is essentially is very big kind of website that does a lot of comparison of different types of products. From there was the time with Panda, so that was fun. That's really where things kind of changed in the industry, I would say, for sure. But kind of figured out what I wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to stay in SEO or not, so I jumped out a bit to kind of broaden my skill sets. Did content marketing, rep management, analytics, and social media. Worked kind of at an e-commerce company. Decided actually my negativity around where SEO was going was incorrect. Found that, I should rather enjoy SEO. Went back into it, went to large scale at a e-commerce marketplace called Zazzle, and was good, and just, decided, time to kind of change things up again, broaden my skill sets, learn to do more around kind of the more branded areas, and that's where I kind of fell in at Zendesk, which is more of a customer service software company focused in B2B.
And how are things going at Zendesk?
Things are good. It's an interesting change because it's kind of starting from the ground up and having to do a lot more training, which is something that I've had to remember doing since I was back in the agency world. So there is, having to retool your mindset back to that, and it's not necessarily some of the large scale, top of the line, large stuff, but rather in-house training, in-house convincing, in-house explanations and reports, going through that type of motion. But at the same time, having to find the right balance between that, because it's such a major brand, and that plays a large part into how the company grows and how it's been doing. So it's a fun kind of back and forth along those lines. And it's nice to be at a company that actually really does care about brand of itself, but not to like a very massive company where it's too many restrictions.
Right. I still can imagine that you probably have to make some pretty big decisions, which is something that I have a hard time with. At First Click, we manage a bunch of different clients ranging from small, just starting out, to bigger clients. And I always have, a difficult time trying to gauge what I should be doing in terms of the bigger clients because of not in general, but mainly when it comes to SEOing pages that have already been SEO'd, but we want to improve, right? And of course, there's a lot of experimenting that goes into SEO, but you don't want to basically give a page worse SEO by trying to test it, right?
Well, right. Usually, so some of the things when I worked at the larger type companies for testing, it was more of trying to do things that I think would be an improvement, and leaving a chunk of other pages as kind of a control set, and just leaving them as is, and then seeing how the two compare.
Right. A/B testing.
Anybody who kind of really does it likes to quibble, and it's more live testing. But yeah, I usually just A/B testing. But there's a definite amount of fun of that, because that's part of it, is you kind of then figure out what's going on and what's going on behind the scenes to really kind of solve the challenge of how do you start to rank higher for certain things, and what matters and what doesn't. And I've always enjoyed kind of that part of it. Which I think for yourself in an agency side of settings, you get to see a bit more of at times, because you get to work with so many different clients, and they try different things, and you're seeing what has worked in that, because you have a lot more variations in what's being built.
I'm a little curious on your thoughts on managing kind of like just one company versus like how you did in the past, managing a bunch of different clients. Do you find it easier, sometimes more challenging? Do you ever feel like you run out of stuff to do? I mean, of course you never run out of stuff to do, there's so much to do, but what are some of the challenges you think are that come with that situation?
When I was in the agency, you'd get clients that you really don't want to work on or enjoy.
Right.
So that you don't really get as much. You're pretty much set to like, look, if you're joining the company, you probably better like kind of the industry, or at least enjoy some of the, then you're in a lot of trouble otherwise. So the day-to-day stuff is much more enjoyable, I would say, in that regard. At the same time, kind of depending on the situation, you might have to handle more of the mundane tasks that you don't necessarily get to do. Or the downside is, say, you don't have as much experience in certain areas. Myself, let's take an example. It's been a bit since I've had to do anything around local SEO.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because I don't work in those type of environments. International, yes. Big, large scale, sure. So not having the certain areas I don't just dive into depth with, which you can get in an agency, is you learn a heck of a lot really fast. If you get the right types of clients and good skill sets from that. Whereas, in some kind of areas in-house, there's a lot more kind of maybe more in depth in the specific area. So for me, it's maybe potentially more like large scale enterprise and technical focus than, say, learning everything and then finding out which of those things you really enjoy in an agency.
I can imagine that the link building campaigns for international SEO are probably a lot different than the link building campaigns for local SEO.
They can, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's yeah, but a lot of times that might just be the case because you haven't really built up the international side of things. Mm-hmm. You might not have a team or the kind of the PR knowledge of that country. So it's less kind of an SEO reason for why you're doing it differently, but just more of how a company structure is built for why that might change a little bit. Mm-hmm. That said, I've been in situations where if as you're building up and say, okay, we really are going to go in this market, and you do try to replicate the same thing you've done to some extent, with here or there with some differences for that new kind of international market. whether it's link building or even on-site content, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. Or interlinking.
Yeah. On-site content, off-site,
Yeah.
on-page stuff versus off-page stuff. Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be like, what are your opinions on kind of how things are moving towards social media? I mean, not moving towards, but how social media is moving, and of course, search engine marketing. Do you only focus on SEO? What are your thoughts?
Right. So today, at least, my main area is SEO, but I have worked in areas of social content, reputations, and analytics. So, I got to be more familiar understanding some of those areas. And I think just from what I see say the social sphere is kind of splitting up a bit. You've got people now who are going to kind of, in some ways, some companies that split between having a paid social person and a regular organic one. And do they both fall under marketing, or does social fall more with PR now? And trying to understand those differences. And it's interesting to kind of say how that plays out. And that also in turn potentially affects how an SEO will interact with the different teams. That said, with the exception of recently with Twitter kind of coming back in the search results, I think social hasn't been as much in the forefront as it had been recently. I think just the fact, for the most part, that social doesn't play a direct impact in ranking, with Google Plus kind of on the wane, with not being as prominent in the search results. The concern and focus about getting all the social stuff hasn't been as prominent. Obviously, it's important. It helps indirectly in many ways, whether it's links or people being familiar with your brand and clicking through and all those areas. But the change of focus within the industry, whether driven through Google or driven just by the fact that social doesn't play that direct part in people learning more about that, has kind of shifted to different areas.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, kind of what I would say, is that social hasn't been as top of mind. And just over time, you start to think, okay, well, how does that play a difference between when you're doing great PR and a great social side? How does that all play together, and how do you work with the two of those with SEO so you really have a great, phenomenal, holistic campaign?
And where's the limit? Like, do you dive into all these social media platforms with the same force that you dive into one social media platform? It gets crazy.
Yeah, and then any new area, you have to kind of set that baseline, that foundation of, all right, what are we at least going to try? And some companies are great at it. They jump right in, give it a shot, see how things go, and if it takes off, they're first in there, and they're going to own it. Others they kind of want to wait and see and kind of play it by ear, and if it starts to get popular, then they'll jump on in. But it's obviously it depends on resources, and you'll find more if you look at kind of a lot of sites the same way. When you put stuff out there, which social button should you have? There's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, depending on the type of article. You used to see Google Plus a lot, maybe not as much, depends on the industry. And then there's just things that change, where video, heavily YouTube, and it's starting to shift a lot towards Facebook. And
Really?
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of problems potentially with that too, because with all that stuff being thrown to Facebook, the YouTube community there is having issues with how Facebook's set up and the copyright claims going back and forth. So there's a lot of changes afoot. So even within the established areas, it's being mindful and cognizant of that. And SEO just kind of is there to work within any of the things that are going to be working out well. In my view, is you got to at least set that foundation if you're going to dive in there. That SEO at least is always kept in mind, and at least you have stuff ready to go with it that's useful for SEO for where you're going to head next in the online world. Just because SEO is going to always kind of snakes into these different things. But I have a bit of a bias on that.
I just recently heard from, do you know Josh Bashinsky? He he created a YouTube video last year called "The Complete Guide to SEO in 2015," and wound up having the #1 video on YouTube. Still has it for SEO. Anyways, he created another one for 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look up SEO 2016, of course, he now has the top video. But he made, anybody could have gotten the statistic, but he said that 30% of the searches now are on Bing. What is your opinion on Bing, and do you think it's something that, or is it something that you SEO for, or do you just SEO for Google and then hope that Bing picks it up?
So lots of different tacks to go with this. There's the whole mobile side of it, and then the desktop side. So starting more on the desktop side, Bing's powering, well, used to power all of Yahoo's, kind of partial now. I think both Ask and AOL have switched over to Bing. So it's there. The optimizations are mostly the same. There are definitely some differences. And just for the most part, yes, you can optimize for Google. You're, a pretty high percentage of the way there for what you need to do with Bing. That stated, there's going to be differences that one should be mindful of, particularly because of the fact that there's a lot of now standard searches being done on Bing through the iPhone, since they've that's the starting point. And which is always great, because now you've got Apple and Microsoft together on something like that, and you're just like, yeah. For those of us in the older industry, that was just a no-no. But yeah, it's you need to kind of pay attention, and at least within kind of the U.S. market, the fact of Bing can still play upwards of 30% of how much traffic you're going to receive in e-commerce. And why should you not care about 30% of your revenue?
Right.
So assuming the two of them. But obviously in certain businesses, those numbers are either higher or lower. Mostly in the lower, goes towards lower. But I think it's still valuable. I think that the more the different AIs that are playing a part with our search or systems, or I should say, those areas are going to be powered by some very big companies that are based either through, for the most part, Google, Cortana/Bing, Siri at some point, kind of getting there. Those areas are essentially search engines,
mm-hmm.
and while they're kind of still driven for mobile, they do matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think leaving them out and not at least keeping them in the back of the mind will cause problems in the future if things shift dramatically further.
Right. Yeah. Just also reading another thing about how DuckDuckGo is like that now the fastest growing search engine or something ridiculous.
No base throughout. You can kind of just
yeah.
When they the thing is, it's not about faster. Like, I want to see when they start to hit some real percentage numbers. To start to eat the market. Then I'd be like, okay, this is interesting. But
yeah. Well, the reasoning behind that is because Firefox apparently just changed them to their default search.
Firefox went default DuckDuckGo?
That's what I heard.
I thought they were default Bing, because they get a heck of a lot of money.
I don't know. That's what I heard. It could have been wrong.
Maybe
but I will put that in the show notes for sure, whether it's right or not. So if anybody who's listening wants to know, they can check the show notes.
I think it's Yahoo.
Is it Yahoo?
Unless they just literally recently did it. As far as I'm aware, it should be Yahoo. Or basically Bing. So.
Right.
Yeah, because it was like $1 billion to keep to essentially have that spot. We'll see how much longer that stays, because Firefox's percentage is still going down. So
interesting. Okay, well. Anyways,
Safari, if that's no Safari.
No, definitely not Safari.
Yeah.
So what would be some things that you kind of want to tell or at least maybe talk about for the kind of the last part of this podcast, like moving forward with SEO, like AMP just recently came out, and is there anything that you think is prevalent to add to this podcast moving forward?
Yeah, well, the funny part being is I'll be talking about some of that in my presentation at MarTech 2016.
Oh, you should definitely plug that.
So yeah, I'll be talking about the expanding nature of SEO for Martech 2016. And I think just before that, I'll be at SMX for a workshop on in-house SEO. So
What?
well, yeah, I'll be one of this kind of. It's the day before SMX West, but
I'm gonna go to that.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to meet up then. So yeah, because it's pretty nearby where I live anyway.
Nice.
Yeah, so on that, I'll be talking, still working on that, and as I kind of take a look at my notes here, yeah, I'll be looking at kind of and explaining some of the things of apps, apps, answers, knowledge graph, secure HTTPS, things like that, where what's going on today, how to optimize for those things, and then just kind of briefly as well talking about what are other things we as SEOs, and we really for the digital marketing world need to keep in mind for SEO.
That sounds like some pretty valuable information.
Yeah, I hope so.
So if the viewer or the listeners on this podcast can't go there to kind of listen to it, is there any way they can watch a replay? Or
I'm not sure about how that the replays and all that's up to Martech, but I'm pretty sure the presentations will be up afterwards as well. So while you won't be able to get the presentation itself, the verbal part of it, you'll still have kind of at least what the slides look like and some of the notes of how to optimize or how to think about SEO there.
Right on.
So that's kind of, in the future, I think there's going to be, well, obviously the stuff today, and there's more and more of that, particularly Google's really ramping hard on security and search together. But in the future, there's so many different areas to start thinking about as technology is advancing, and a lot of different things in the home. We can see kind of just in the near term, we have Amazon's Echo. That's essentially another version of voice search, but for your home. And then through, what was it? I think just today, Google's self-driving car just got approval for being a legal driver. So
wow.
Imagine that extra amount of time you're spending in the car. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are on the horizon, and so search as a whole gets to be that much more important, both as part of the pie and as that pie grows bigger. Or really, if you want to say out of your whole day, the shift of where things go in that pie is going to change again, and they're going to change towards the benefit of search.
Yeah, one of the leaders of the search algorithm at Google was I forgot his name, but he was talking about how the search algorithm has the interpretation right now of like a 13-year-old, and they expect it to be like of an adult in the future, which is pretty cool.
When you say interpretation of what?
Of like how it handles queries and.
Yeah, I think Dwayne Forrester, when I was at PubCon, he gives some really cool kind of a keynotes on the potential future tech and where things are going with that, and how having your own real digital assistant is going to be really good, so that it's not going to be the stuff today that's kind of really below dumb AI. It's the way to do it. Not to say that 13-year-olds are dumb. I'm not saying that.
Some are.
Yeah, well, even adults can be. So it's more just the fact being that it's gonna get really good and assigning stuff up, and the bigger interesting parts of it is going to be that connection, I think, between a lot of the different devices, and trying to be able to be a part of that, so that when people are looking to be able to do stuff, they will connect directly to your service automatically, or at least have that option to be able to choose to do so. And the further companies kind of stay away from those new areas, that's a potential loss pretty quickly, especially as tech's starting to really continually has been going faster and faster. Those areas are only going to get kicked up another notch. And so trying to stay on top of that is going to be more important going forward.
Right on. Well, I think that was some pretty good stuff, Micah. Do you want to say anything else, or?
No, just thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah, not a problem, and be fun to kind of see how these things progress and wish you the best part of your day.
Yep. Well, we'll see you guys next time, and that's it.